Alrighty, so I'm going to get a few close-ups on this, but as you can see here, the intonation screws for each of the strings here, they have seen some better days, and even some of the saddles and the adjustment screws for the action here on the saddles. At the end of the day, this guitar actually gets used, and that's the point of these guitars. They're supposed to be actually getting used rather than sitting for the most part. So if you're in a situation like this where some of the actual moving parts in here are actually all rusted out on your Tune-o-matic or your string through bridge, actually a pretty easy fix, and this is all stuff that you can get like at a local hardware store or any like Walmart or anything like that. So essentially, like, what you want to do is actually just take all of these screws out, and you want to keep all of these saddles and the screws in the same order that you took them out. So I'm going to start with the 6th string here. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to move the saddle just to the side here. Pop that screw out, get the spring. And as you can see here, there's a good amount of rust on the screw here. And that's actually going to impact the usability of this screw here and how much you can actually intonate the saddle, because there's so much rust caked onto the actual threads that saddle is going to be moving back on. So then you're going to take out all of the individual screws and the saddles, and you're going to put them all in order just so you don't mess up the order, because these saddles are actually made for certain strings. So you want to make sure they're all in order the way they come from the factory. All right, so you can see there's a ton of rust and gunk and just grime on the base plate of this bridge here. So then when you have all the saddles out of the base plate here on this bridge, what you want to do is actually go ahead and tighten it down. I'm going to do that real quick, real easy. Just need a screwdriver for that. That's going to make sure that the bridge is actually sitting as tight as it should be. And under the bridge is actually where the ground cable sits that goes from the electric guitar circuitry. And that's what's actually going to ground the strings. So then you're not going to get any sort of like grounding issues that come standard on maybe some of those Harley Benton guitars that I reviewed a couple of years ago. The Black Flying V, that had a pretty bad grounding issue. So if you are getting some sort of like grounding issues, make sure you check under the bridge here and make sure that the ground cable is actually sitting flush to the actual backside of the base plate of this bridge here. Next thing you want to do is actually get rid of some of the gunk out of here, and essentially if the gunk is not built up too bad, all you really need is something just to kind of break up the actual gunk. So I'm going to use a little bit of this contact cleaner here. This is safe on metal, so this is going to be good for the bridge here. Again, you just need to actually get a little bit of like liquid in there just to break up some of that gunk. This does not have to be like the all-in-one cleaner or anything. What I like to use is also a toothbrush and really get in there and really kind of like, almost like as if you're brushing your teeth, and really work it in there. Really get all of that dirt and that grime out of there. And that's kind of it. Again, real simple tools. You don't need like the craziest materials or like hardware to actually like really get your guitar going. If you get one of those like DIY guitar repair kits from like Ernie Ball or Dunlop or anything that are like maybe 50 bucks, like that's going to be like a really great starting point for a lot of us guitar players. And even then, look at that, that's looking way better than it was before I actually went to it with an actual toothbrush. So get a toothbrush, anything that can actually scrape out dirt or anything and really get out like gunk and dirt, a little bit of a cleaning solution, and then you're gonna have a really good bass plate at the end of the day. So if you can't get out a lot of that gunk or anything, just spray it again. So I'm gonna do that one more time. Again, back in with the toothbrush, clean it all up. And if there is any gunk where the actual intonation screws sit in the back here, what you could do is actually get a little bit more detail and actually throw some pipe cleaner and run it back and forth in here. And that's just going to make sure that all the gunk that is in the back here where these intonation screws sit is just going to be completely gone. So then your screw is actually going to move much more efficiently than it would be if it was all covered up with gunk in this back plate here. Simple problems require simple solutions. All right, so next up, let's deal with these intonation screws. And what I'm going to show you is a real easy method to actually getting rid of all of the rust on these intonation screws here. I have a can right here. I have a little bit of CLR, calcium lime rust. What I'm gonna do, pour a little bit into that can right there. And then what I'm gonna do is actually put all of these screws and the springs into the CLR here. Gonna drop it in one by one. What you wanna make sure is all of these pieces in here are actually fully submerged by the CLR. You're gonna let these pieces sit in the CLR just for a little bit here. You don't want them to sit too long. And then you're gonna slowly empty that CLR out and then rinse these with some cold water just to make sure all of that CLR gets off of these moving parts here. And there we go. The intonation screws and springs are essentially back to life. And when you're at this stage, let those screws and those springs dry for a little bit longer. Then once they are dry, you're gonna put them back and reassemble the bridge.